Hey guys, welcome to of Sports Tech X Weekly. Well, we're at episode 32, which is pushed by a week, because last week we did not have one. For the millions of you that are watching, you might have noticed that we skipped an episode. That was because Ben and I were traveling. Well, it seems like Ben is still traveling, and I am back here in Berlin to bring you the news for the week. A lot's been happening, and also not too much has been happening. Well, lots been happening with us at Sports Tech X, which is why apologies in advance if this show is going to be tight and brief, but I have to keep it that way because we have so much content coming for you. We have been doing a Web3 in Sports month of content. So we've got a great episode out with Brian Zwerner from Beyond the Game Net. A few weeks ago, that episode went out today. We've had some guest articles from coming out tomorrow. Before I get to that, what month is sports. The goal is a topic that is constantly changing, and we have a bunch of cool content across all our channels. All of that will culminate in our first ever Web3 in Sports report. Yeah, it's going to be in our format, the way we like to talk about things, with a lot of data, with a lot of interviews to get some good industry perspective. We already have some confirmed with some big names in the industry, from Candy Digital to the MLB to NASCAR to a bunch of others that we're going to keep adding into our lineup. So look out for that content across all our channels, our Web3 in Sports month, which will finish in our Web3 in Sports report. All right, that said, this is STX Weekly, where we bring you our top news for the week. And this week, I'm going to kick off with our funding rounds of the week. Oops, I've got the wrong window open there. As you can see, I'm not fully prepared, but now we go. Top funding rounds of the week. We've had quite a few big deals. It seems to be every week. Athletes United raised 30 million. Katalyst raised 26 million. In Gamurs with 12 million. What are these cool startups? I'd say bigger than startups. Athletes United is a women's sports focused network of professional leagues and such. They just raised 30 million. Their investors include Kevin Durant and Rich Klein's 35 Ventures, a bunch of other people from the industry, names that we know: David Blitzer, Angela Ruggiero, who's the chief executive of Sports Innovation Lab, people that we know well in the US. But basically, it's a network of leagues that features softball, volleyball, basketball, and lacrosse, so women's leagues. This is all money going in to promote women's sports. Yeah, there was a nice article that came out from Leaders Week. I don't know if any of you were there in London. I was not, but I believe one of the heads of sport, I forget which brand, was talking about women's sports will generate $1 billion in revenue over the next, I think by 2030 was her projection. And who's to say that that is not going to be accurate, or that is not going to be surpassed? Yeah, with more and more focus coming on women's sports. We're going to come back to women's sports in a second. But first, a story about Katalyst. Katalyst is a fitness wearable, basically, like it's an electric vest. I don't know if you can see great from this image. But basically, it's a vest that you wear that has electrodes passing through it, electric current that passes through the vest as you're working out. It's using basically electricity to power your muscles, to help activation, electro muscle stimulation, which if you've ever done physio, it is a technique. I'd hurt my back and my knee a few years ago, and the physio was using exactly this electromuscle stimulation. So now you can have it at home as a device that you wear when you work out every day, potentially. Yeah, that's a company called Katalyst from Las Vegas. They raised 26 million. That's Athletes United done, Katalyst done. And next, Gamurs. Gamurs is a esports media network. What they do is basically they create a lot of content, which is by content creators. So they're a platform where content creators publish their content. So streamers, other people from the esports industry, mainly streamers, I would assume, but other types of content. So might be shows, might be just live streams, might be tipsters, might be, let's say, coaching programs. All of that is on this platform called Gamurs. They raised 12 million from Elysian Park and Cero Capital, one of those, Powerhouse Capital, Aura Ventures, and Artisan. All right. Gamurs was quickly developed in the industry's largest media network, 55 million monthly active users across its 16 major digital publications covering esports gaming and entertainment. Riyad Chikhani, clearly these guys have smashed execution, and they will continue to do so with the amount that they have raised. That's the first bit of news. Before I have popped my next story, I've already given you the headline, top acquisitions, and there were lots of those in the last week or so. We'll start with DAZN. Yeah, so again, before I get into the stories, there seems to be, we keep talking about it. There's just so much happening in the space. Apart from funding deals, 2022 has already crossed 7 billion. I think it'll probably comfortably reach 10 billion by the end of the year, because we always see a let's say a ramp up towards the end of the year, maybe at least maybe 8.5, 9 billion for sure, which is more than double what it was from 2020, and before that 2021 of course was over 12 billion. So we've seen a lot of investment, but now we're seeing a lot of acquisition activity as well. We keep reporting this. We saw a lot of acquisition activity happening in betting before, but now we see it happening across the sports tech landscape. Okay, so we're going to cover a few of those stories today. So DAZN acquired 11 Sports and Team Whistle. 11 Sports seems like, these are mainly media rights acquisitions, because 11 Sports obviously had rights for a few leagues before. They had been bidding for different leagues, especially in Portugal and Belgium. 11 Sports was involved in selling those rights. DAZN currently holds Italy, DACH, and Spain. But 11 also has presence in other markets in Taiwan, Southeast Asia, so on. So with this acquisition of 11 Sports, which is a big company, I don't believe the deal value is disclosed, not official channels anyway. But this is a big deal for the industry in terms of consolidating rights. And with Team Whistle, they've also acquired a media business which will help their, let's say, fan engagement capabilities, because Team Whistle does some pretty cool social media engagement for fans. Yeah. All right. With a Comscore of 700 million followers across its channels, so Team Whistle does and generates 5 billion views per month across social media platforms. Yeah. So DAZN is acquiring a couple of big names here who was involved in this deal. Yeah, they've added a few zeros in their balance, I'm sure. So that's the first one. That's DAZN. Next up, I was actually here. I didn't watch this announcement, I have to be honest, because when you're at events, you're actually rarely age. But I was in Sevilla for World Football Summit, and over there, apparently, OneFootball announced the acquisition of Gloria. Now, what is Gloria? Gloria is a women's football-focused app. It is, I think I read somewhere they have about 400,000 users, 400,000 followers on Instagram. So good scale, basically create a lot of content around women's football. So with this, Gloria founder Victoria Kogevina, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Victoria Kogevina Reynal, will become the vice president of women's football at OneFootball. OneFootball famously raised 300 million earlier this year. They have spent a fair chunk of that on on their, let's say, Web3 platforms. And now you can imagine that they've spent a decent chunk on acquisitions as well. This is a big win for our investors, for our team, and Gloria has actually pretty good founders. Alexis Ohanian, co-founder of Reddit, was also involved in this announcement. OneFootball, if you don't know yet, have already crossed 100 million active users. So they are a huge platform. I've been a user since, I want to say 13, 14, maybe 15. I don't even remember when they went live. But yeah, they're big and getting bigger, it would seem. So that's another acquisition. And the third one, our good friends at Teamworks, they were pretty active. They acquired two companies. They acquired Whistle Recruiting. They've acquired the future of recruiting, they call it. Basically, they acquired Whistle Recruiting and RecruitSuite. RecruitSuite was a part of, I forget the name of the company. I saw this before, but basically it was a recruitment product part of another company, Stack Sports. It was a recruitment product part of another company. So they bought RecruitSuite and Whistle Recruiting. RecruitSuite comes from Stack Sports. With that, Teamworks is adding the capability to do recruitment on their platform. Teamworks calls themselves the operating system for sports. Basically, they are a management software for sports teams, mainly leagues, less so, to manage communication, scheduling, a whole bunch of operational stuff to bring in efficiency there. They have already been quite active. They acquired Influencer, Notemeal in sports nutrition. These guys raised, what was it? I think 50 million earlier this year. So fat stacks are being spent on those fat stacks are being spent on some recruitment softwares. Shout out to Mitch and Zach and the team. Works. Yeah, great to see great companies growing in this space. All right, so that is Teamworks. Our next story, this one. Well, if you got the episode from a couple of weeks ago, there was a story we jokingly told about this guy, Hans Niemann, Hans, and let's say anal beads were involved in apparently a chess game that he played with Magnus Carlsen, where he defeated Magnus Carlsen in a real life chess game. Those are all rumors. I don't want to go into that story anymore. We call it a joke, right? Turns out that part of it was a joke, but the actual story was that Hans Niemann, has actually been cheating in online chess games. Now, it's not proven that he's been cheating in OTB games, over the board games as they called in chess, but chess.com, the official authority, released a 72-page report on Tuesday stating that Hans Niemann has likely cheated in more than 100 online chess games, including prize money events. Now, why am I including this story here? Personally, I just found it was a nice closing of the loop, but I actually like the analysis that they had done. So how did they discover that Hans Niemann had been cheating? So there are, for online chess games, especially tournament games, there are a lot of softwares that do this. I read into the methodology for one of them, and they essentially acknowledge the fact that chess between humans can be played fair, but human versus computer, it's a no contest, right? So any computer device will always win against, no matter who it's playing against. With that said, it knows, the tournament play knows that if a player is reacting in a certain way or is making certain moves which are close to the ideal moves, so it's constantly checking what would be the ideal move recommended by a computer for on this chessboard in this moment in time. If the player is making moves close to that, then the likelihood is high of him cheating. It also is recording the activity on the system. So like an anti-hacking software, it was checking which window you're on and what time you spend on another window. So it checks, I guess, what environment you're in. It puts you in a virtual environment and also sees what are the windows that you're interacting with. So it noted that Hans Niemann would, before every move, would open a separate window. It didn't know which window or where that website, what website he was looking at, but he opened a separate window and then went back to his chessboard, made a move that was very close or identical to what the ideal, let's say, a master computer would prescribe on that chessboard at that time. Yeah, I hope I haven't explained it in too complicated way, but basically chess.com and analyzed over a period of I think July or 2015 to August 2020, he cheated in over 100 online chess games. This is the list of the tournament, number of games he has cheated in. It's pretty detailed. What their score is. The other argument that they make, which I find is pretty weak, is saying that Hans Niemann is a genius. Yeah, his skills have improved in chess more than any other chess player through history. So you see Bobby Fischer's score. So from the age of 11 to age of 19.5, what was their, let's say, strength improvement? And Hans Niemann's improvement is much more than anybody else. How do you explain that? He could just be good, but they suspect that he is full of crap, because apparently even after the chess game against Magnus Carlsen, where he defeated him, and when he was questioned on certain moves in an interview, his answers seemed inconsistent. You're right, that does seem weak as a logic for, hey, he cheated. There's no concrete proof, but there was enough, let's say, grounds for suspicion. And on that basis, there was this big dossier released saying that Hans Niemann has cheated in over 100 online chess games. As per the dossier, also it adds, lastly, before I jump on to the next story, it adds that the reason that they brought this up is Niemann had himself admitted, where is that? Oops, sorry. Niemann had himself admitted that he had cheated in games as recently as 2020. This was in some private conversations they discovered some text that he had sent with somebody else. So they say that on the basis of his own admissions, and he came out then publicly to say that he refuted those leaks and said, I only cheated when I was 12 years old, which is why they could make this public in this time. Otherwise, he had previously been banned from this platform and it was never made public. So all in all, it's just a fun story of cheating and drama that came out in the world of sports that I wanted to share with you. I hope I didn't drone on and on about it. I thought it was a cool story. All right, next up, we've got our second top story for top number 2 for the week is Gatorade Smart Water Bottle. So if you have $70 that you want to spend on a water bottle which connects to a smartphone, Gatorade has got one for you. It will help you determine your baseline hydration level and monitor your post-workout recovery. Man, as I'm reading this, I'm losing enthusiasm for these products. I mean, I feel like I'm sure there are people who would buy it and will find value from it, but it is a bit of a case of maybe solutionism where no real problem exists. I mean, Gatorade also, by the way, has one-time use sweat patches, which I see a better use case for because they're doing at least continuous monitoring when they're worn. But otherwise, do you really need a bottle to tell you that you should drink water? Maybe you do. I just drink water. But if you are the type who needs a bit of help, who needs a reminder, then this is a product for you. So it'll track your hydration levels and make sure that it gives you, as said, that the bottle is dishwasher safe, but the cap is not. The cap is where the intelligence is. So this some shots and that, okay, yeah, you should drink some water now. And the sweat patch can also be integrated for the hydration report with the smart Gatorade bottle. All right, Gatorade smart water bottle. Daniel has just sent me a link of Hans Niemann's pro fishing scandal. Okay, Daniel, let me take a look. Oops, I didn't mean to do that, but I'm trying to copy the link. Unfortunately, I can't copy a link from the chat. But let's see. Mashables fishing controversy explained. All right, Daniel, you maybe give us a quick one-line summary before I try to read it out on air. But thank you. I will definitely read it, and maybe we'll make it to next week's show. All right, moving on to our last story for the week. If you have time at the end, I will read Daniel's story. Our last story for the week is there are new apps, and these are pretty interesting ones. Well, the first one, right, is pretty basic. But the second one I actually quite like. The NBA has launched a new app for fans, which is a new revamped super. Yeah, so you can do everything that you want to do on the NBA on this app. It doesn't speak to any sort of Sorare integration. So the fantasy game, which they've just announced with Sorare, I don't know if you can play that. So I guess not everything, but it does integrate the League Pass, the NBA TV. It has some dedicated real-time highlights and recommendations. Yeah, the NBA is revamping its app for fans. Pretty cool. Maybe not. The cooler one is this one: FIFA launching a new app for players at the Qatar World Cup. So the digital transformation, we had covered this story, maybe easily 6 months ago. I forgot to look it up, where FIFA was talking about developing a new data language. Yeah, so they would have a data setup of, like, I think it was 20 people watching every game. I think 20 or 25 people, basically almost one person per player on the pitch. So I think, or maybe there were some who, maybe the goalkeepers were not involved, I'm not sure, but somebody who's actively watching every player on the pitch, and their job was to do manual notation of data activity for that player. Their goal was to produce, I think it was something like 200 more data points than are currently recorded. On average, we talk about on a football pitch, there are 30 to 50 data points that are recorded. FIFA was saying that we want to add 200. Okay, Daniel has responded, but I'll finish the story, and thanks for the little ping, Daniel. I'll come back to that once I finish this FIFA bit. But so FIFA set up this data room where people are gathering more and more data about what is happening in the match. What they're doing with this data, one of the things that they're doing with this data is actually sending it to the players themselves. So as soon as the game is done, players will receive match and performance data shortly after the final whistle. And the app is safeguarded by, I guess, data sharing regulations in agreement with FIFA. Now, all the teams of the World Cup, I'm sure, certainly the big nations, will have analysts and teams who are doing all this, or will have solutions in place for this analysis, right? So those teams are covered. What I think FIFA is trying to do is try to push their new data language onto those teams, right? So they will use manual and automated techniques to collect and analyze data, tracking data, physical performance metrics. All this data will be synchronized with match footage, with information, and with shared with each player shortly after the final whistle. It's basically like they're trying to circumvent the analytics teams that the teams are already using. I can totally imagine a situation where a player will be seeing this FIFA data, maybe is getting his own analysis from it, because remember, data is only as good as your inference from that data. Otherwise, it's just data. It's just there. You have to understand it. You have to interact with it, right? So a player might be drawing his own inferences from it versus what the team is telling him might be a bit different. So it could create a point of conflict. But I believe that this is essentially FIFA saying, hey, take all our stuff for free, and maybe for the next World Cup or for other tournaments that they might be trying to upsell their own new data language, right? This could be the agenda. But what are they saying? For the first time, not only participating teams, but the players themselves will have the opportunity to get direct access to the performance data and related video clips, says Johannes Holzmuller. And there is a growing interest from players to get access to the data, but they also acknowledge that this data is super sensitive. It is, it can be used for a number of things. Itself, not even by scouts and competitors, is within the team itself, for contracts, for your medicals, for all sorts of stuff, for commercialization, for fantasy betting, etc. So players are getting more and more conscious of owning their data, and this just seems like, I don't know what lines they're crossing, but as the article says, FIFA is involved. So I guess the players have somebody who's looking after the interests of the players. In fact, this last the article is that FIFA's vision 2020 to 2023 is to see how technology can aid, support, and he thought that has seen it's launch a direct-to-consumer video platform. Right? Sorry, that's the last thing I wanted to add. Is I wonder how much of this data we will actually see repurposed or repackaged for their FIFA Plus platform, which they launched, right? The article mentions the NFTs of FIFA, which is FIFA Plus Collect. I had a fun chat with Joanne Schlicken. Sorry, I'm saying his name horribly. But Joanne basically works for the risk management team at FIFA, and we were talking about what FIFA hopes to achieve with FIFA Plus and FIFA Plus Collect, and they're obviously putting out content for its audience. Maybe some of this player data will go there as well. All right. Daniel. Yes, I did see this. Okay, so Daniel is talking about a guy who put lead weights into his catches. Yeah, thanks. I thought there was a connection to the chess story, but it is true. There is a video of. Let me see if I can pull it up. This guy, this fishing champion who's won. And yeah, basically this guy. This is properly. Yeah. Okay, I guess, but like this guy was in a fishing competition was actually using lead weights that he was feeding into the fish. And he expected this, so the wins will be higher. And he would win competitions, lying and singing. But if I can go to the section on where he shows this, they cut open the fish. It really was hilarious. It was pretty nuts. They cut open the fish. They show him like these huge lead balls. The video is not playing properly, but these huge lead balls that are actually in the. That's how he was scamming the. Not just lead balls. I think he was. Yeah, there you go. I think you can see it in this image. These are the lead balls that this guy was feeding the fish, and he was actually guts. Like he was putting anything in there that he could put him out to the fish. It was a bit nuts. Funny stuff people do. Yeah, nothing sports tech related, but as I can tell, Daniel's a fan of fun stories from the world of sports. So are we on this show. All right, guys, thank you for the contribution, Daniel. Appreciate it. Enjoy your podcast, by the way. I'm a fan of the Nico Rosberg one, especially. I usually check that out most weeks. I know you were involved in the production. Shout out to Daniel. He runs a podcast. He basically the biggest sports podcast in Germany. So make check out Daniel Sprugel, and I think it's called Sports Maniac, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. If I'm forgive me if I'm wrong. All right, guys, that is a wrap for our show for the week. As I said, make sure to check out our LinkedIn, our Twitter, for all the content that we have coming out around Web3 in sports. This is going to be a month of it, and we're going to feed into our Web3 in sports report. With that, Ben might be back next week, or he might not. Who knows where this guy has disappeared to? If not him, I will definitely be here